I'm Assad Ahmed. Welcome to BBC London. On the programme tonight, known locally as the Rainham volcano, the area has now legally been declared to be contaminated, something local people knew all about.
Residents report nosebleeds, headaches, their physical and mental health being hugely compromised by this significant risk during what is a health crisis with children at the sharp end of it.
But how long will it take to clean the land? We report from the area. Also tonight, a £150 fine for pouring coffee down a drain. We meet the Londoner who had to face 3 enforcement officers in Richmond.
There's this fellow just walking across the road here, phone out, in his hand, easy snatch.
Yeah, on the road with the West End taxi driver who's witnessed multiple phone snatches and is warning people to be more vigilant. And opening ballet to all, why you might see some international names performing at local theatres. Good evening. A former illegal landfill site has finally officially been declared to be contaminated, and that's years after local people argued that the area was causing health problems. Arnoldsfield in Rainham has been at the centre of complaints about toxic air from fires. It's even become locally known as the Rainham volcano, with a fire brigade being called 160 times within the past 3 years. Campaigners are relieved to win their battle, but now the land has to be made safe. Here's Layla Hayes.
Smoke fills the sky as another fire rages at Arnoldsfield in Rainham, an issue that's been blighting the lives of locals for years.
Great plumes of smoke all over the school playgrounds, not being able to play outside during the summer months when the fires are at their worst. Residents report nosebleeds, headaches, their physical and mental health being hugely compromised by this significant risk during what is a health crisis with children at the sharp end of it.
Arnoldsfield is over there, and it's right next to the children's playground here behind me. It's also close to homes and schools, yet residents say their concerns about the toxic waste here have been ignored for years. Coral Jeffrey has lived here all her life, but now has a respiratory condition and worries about contamination.
We always got dust on the windowsills and on the garden furniture. And this year I had a bumper crop of peaches. They were absolutely amazing, but we couldn't do anything with them, couldn't eat them because they were coated in this thick grey dust.
The landfill site is owned by a private landlord, but following a judicial review in the High Court, Havering Council has finally declared the land as contaminated. It means they now have a legal duty to clean it up.
I'd like to think that after all this period of time that we can finally get to a solution and solve the problem, which unfortunately residents have had to be suffering for years. And you know, we've always been really keen to make sure that we can get that sort of solution. But as we know, it's not council land, it's private land, so we're reliant upon the private landowners to do their bit.
We contacted the landowner but got no response. Campaigners like Ruth say they'll keep fighting for clean air.
Air pollution is invisible, but it's a killer. And this extreme exposure also shows the lack of social justice, the lack of equality, because this wouldn't be happening in Chelsea or somewhere like that. All children deserve to breathe clean air. It's a basic need.
There's no doubt this land is contaminated. The question now is, when will it be cleaned up? Layla Hayes, BBC London.
Well, that's our top story tonight, but lots to keep you watching, including...
Gentleman here on the left also, just walking along, looking in the shops with his phone out. And the lady.
We're on the road with a West End taxi driver who's warning people to be more vigilant against phone snatchers. Pouring a small amount of leftover coffee down a drain in West London has landed a woman a fine of £150. Borechu Yeshiliot says she was left feeling shaky after being stopped by 3 enforcement officers near the bus stop where it happened. Well, Ms. Yeshiliot was using a reusable cup and wanted to make sure the leftover coffee wasn't spilled on the bus. But that wasn't good enough. The story's been getting lots of attention. Paul Murphy-Casp has more on it.
So let's just remind ourselves of what happened in this case. Well, Baju was going about her morning commute in Richmond as normal about 2 weeks ago. But just before getting on her bus was approached by 3 enforcement officers from Richmond Council. I'll let her explain what happened.
I didn't want to kind of cause any trouble on the bus, any spillage or any mess. And I noticed that my bus was approaching. I went all the way to over there, the district drain. So I just poured the leftover bit. It wasn't much, it was just a tiny little bit. I turned around. As soon as I turned around, I noticed 3 men enforcement officers chasing me. So it was a bit shock. They told me I did something criminal against the law. They told me I'm not allowed to pour anything in the drain, and I tried to explain my situation, but they didn't really listen. I haven't seen any signs, any warnings around. I asked them if there is information like on the council website either, but they didn't respond there. I didn't receive any response, so it was a bit more like, can I have your ID please? I need to issue the fine.
Well, Baju was issued with an on-the-spot £150 fine, reduced to £100 if paid within 2 weeks. But what are the rules around what can go down a storm drain? Well, Baju was fined under Section 33 of the Environmental Protection Act 1990, which basically says it's an offence to deposit or dispose of waste in any way likely to pollute land or water, including pouring liquids into street drains. Now, whether you agree or disagree, this story has had a huge response from you, with over 2 million people reading it on the BBC News website and app. Let's just look at some of those comments that have come in. Stuart on Facebook says, I'm sure there's worse things going down the drain other than coffee. Aleem reacted with, she's quite right to point out the lack of signage informing residents of the law. They could have just issued her a warning instead of a fine, though. And Michelle said, how is it better to pour liquids into a bin? Wouldn't it just leak out onto the pavement and then she'd be fined for that? Doesn't sound like the right advice given. And Matt wrote on the BBC News website, ignorance of the law is not a defence. Now, we've heard from Richmond Council on this. It told us footage confirms the officers acted professionally and were sensitive to the circumstances, and that enforcement action is only taken when necessary, and residents who feel a fine has been issued incorrectly can request a review. Now, a big thank you to all of you who got in contact to comment on this story. We love hearing from you, whether on this or any of the stories we cover here at BBC London. So if you want to get in contact or let us know about something we should be covering, scan the QR code or drop us an email. hellobbclondon@bbc.co.uk.
Paul Murphy reporting there. Well, I have an update for you as well, which has come to us from Ms Yeshiliot this afternoon. She says she's been contacted today by Richmond Council to say the fixed penalty notice of £150 has been cancelled, and she says the council has apologised for any upset or inconvenience caused. Now let's take a brief look at some other stories making the news today. A parole board hearing has heard that the mother of baby P was recalled to prison last year after she started a relationship with a man she met online without telling officials. Tracy Connolly, who you see here, was jailed in 2009 for the death of her 17-month-old son Peter at their home in Tottenham. She's bidding for her release. A man has been jailed for 12 years for killing a woman in a high-speed car crash in North London on Christmas Day 2022. Evan Ford from Bedford was driving at speeds of up to 140 miles an hour on Hendon Way when he crashed into the back of a BMW. Maria Carolina do Nascimento died at the scene. Eurostar has revealed plans to run double-decker trains through the Channel Tunnel for the first time. The rail operator has confirmed it'll order up to 50 trains. They should start running in 6 years' time. Yesterday, we brought you a special investigation looking at the enormous problem of phone thefts in London. In fact, we've become known as the phone-snatching capital of Europe and arguably the world. Well, it may just be a phone, but it makes people feel unsafe, and that matters. A taxi driver in the West End has seen multiple phone snatches and wants people to be more aware. Paul Brennan is the chairman of the Licensed Taxi Drivers Association.
Lady here on the right, phone out, crossing the road here. 1, 2, 3 people with their phones out. I've just driven down Oxford Street, and if I stopped counting at 20, to be completely honest with you, I thought, yeah, what, I'm going to have a little exercise. How many phones can I see? Now, there we go. Look, there's this fellow just walking across the road here, phone out, in his hand, easy snatch. No one thinks that anything's going to happen to them until it happens to them, and that's the problem. The chances of it happening are skyrocketing. Gentleman here on the left also, just walking along, looking in the shops with his phone out. And the lady is always on an electric bike because they can get away so quickly. You know, they're usually all dressed in black with balaclavas on, hoods on, and it's just so easy for them. You know, it's rich pickings out there. Where I've seen problems is when they mount the pavement and they've knocked over pedestrians, sent them flying, and you know, there's been a few injuries that way, broken legs, etc. So that's where the danger really comes in there. Lady over there on the right hand side at the crossing, looking around, but not at her phone. Phone hanging out. A lot of cab drivers, me included, and our members, they have regular clients who will come in from all across the globe, come to visit London a couple of times a year. They're just not coming anymore. They're now calling up, cancelling. No, we're not going to come to London. I'm afraid it's not safe.
OK, Jessica, you've been investigating phone thefts in London for some time now. London gaining a reputation for being an international centre for phone thefts. Is that fair?
Well, let's first, Asad, remind ourselves of the scale of the problem in the capital. A phone is now stolen every 7.5 minutes. That's over 180 phones stolen every single day. So I think it is fair to say that actually London has a reputation when it comes to phone theft. It's all on the increase because organised crime groups have pivoted to dealing in stolen phones, simply because it is so lucrative for them. They can make up to £400 per stolen device. What's also massive is the response that we've had to this investigation. Hundreds of people have reached out to us with testimonies of their own experiences, but also some really helpful practical advice on what to do. One person said, have your phone strapped around your neck. I did, and my phone was saved from a snatcher. The other thing that we're hearing a lot of is the same kind of sentiment that we heard in that report there. Mark wrote in, for instance, and said, don't use phones on the street. It is unnecessary. It is a waste of precious police resources when owners do not take basic care of their phones. OK, but let's face it, Jess, most people will report the phone snatch to the police because they have to claim on insurance or just to tell the phone provider. But will the police, once they've had the report, actually investigate it at all? Well, the police say they are taking this incredibly seriously, and actually the City of London police have a really interesting tactic when it comes to making people aware of this issue. They've started to spray blue plaques on the pavements across the square mile in the centre of London. I think you can see pictures on the screen now. These say either a snatch happened here or a snatcher was arrested. And it's a pretty innovative way of really trying to get the message across to people that snatching is happening every single day. We discussed yesterday the Met's approach to tackling this. They are going after the organised crime groups. They're investing in their own fleet of like-for-like electric bikes. And I also spoke to the Met's lead on phone theft, Commander Andy Featherstone, to ask him what his thoughts were in relation to the tech companies and the responsibility that they should be taking.
When we seize the 2,000 phones that we've seized, it's very difficult to identify the victims because we can't identify from the phone who it belongs to without an IMEI number. And we're just asking for a simple change to for manufacturers that when you switch the phone on, it's clearly identified from the screen, the unique reference number. We know that the technology, or we believe the technology exists to be able to stun the phone, essentially that it can't be used again. But at the moment, once the phone goes out of the UK, we're seeing that they're being recycled. They're still using iCloud services or cloud services, and they're still operational outside of the UK. And it's that change that we're looking for to essentially de-incentivise criminals from stealing these phones.
Well, Kate Bevan is a journalist who specialises in technology. Thank you for joining us this evening. Kate, the officer there suggesting like a stun switch or a kill switch which operators can activate when a phone is reported stolen. Is that something they can do?
Well, I looked into this a bit earlier, actually, because I thought you could, but actually the tech companies have done quite a lot anyway to protect your phone. I mean, one thing is my phone's an Android, and I've got it set so that if it's snatched out of my hand, it'll lock the screen. So that's one good thing. iPhones, you can set up theft detection as well, and it requires a much longer delay before anybody gets into it. But also, looking at why there isn't a kill switch, apparently one reason is because that would have to be network-wide, and that's a vulnerability, and people worry that they could hack that and cause all sorts of havoc.
But could the phone companies be doing more?
I think they're doing quite a lot as it is. As I say, you know, there are lots. I think it depends on how you feel about this. I mean, there are a lot of things that you can do to protect your phone that are implemented by the phone companies. You know, for example, you can lock apps on your phone. I always recommend doing that. You couldn't do that until quite recently, for example. So, you know, there are lots of things you can do with your phone to protect it, and those are implemented by the tech companies.
Is it something you do personally? I mean, when you're out and about, I know we see a lot of people with their phones out in front of them, and it's made easy for phone snatchers, but they have the right to do that. What do you do to
Sure, I don't get my phone out if I can possibly
Not at
avoid
all?
it. I mean, I've got a smartwatch, so I can see, you know, notifications on that. I can do maps on this at a pinch. So, you know, that sort of feels to me that it's... I don't want to get my phone out if I'm down at Oxford Circus, for example. But also, I've got my phone set up to protect my data on it. So if my phone is stolen, God forbid, you know, I've got apps locked so you can't access my email. There's a private space on Android phones. You can move apps to that require an unlock. Another thing you can do, actually, is set your notifications so that you can't read a notification unless the phone's unlocked. So if you get a code from your bank to approve a transaction, for example, you know, I've got it set so you can't see that.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you about something we heard in the office, and I'm hoping you're going to knock this straight on the head and say that's rubbish, Assad, no truth in it at all. That phone companies are perhaps not doing as much as they can do to keep phones safe, because if a phone is stolen, the person claims on insurance, whatever, they order another phone.
Do you know what?
Now, that's just a route. There's no basis in that. Tell me that's wrong.
I don't know. I heard that as well, because I was talking about this earlier.
Really? You've heard it as well?
Well, you know, phone companies exist to sell us phones, don't they? I mean, I honestly don't know if that's true, but I think also it's more difficult to instigate a kill switch than people think it is.
OK, Kate Bevan, thank you very much. That's absolutely fascinating, and thanks for the tips you've given as well. Many thanks. Now, if you want to see the full BBC London documentary on phone thefts, and it really is worth watching, it's by our reporter Jessica Ewer, who we heard from just a few minutes ago. You can see it, including fascinating footage of phone thefts taking place. It's on the BBC iPlayer right now. All you have to do is search for what you see on your screen there. It's Fighting the Phone Snatchers. Do take a look if you can. Now, there are calls for the government to unfreeze housing benefit rates to keep up with rising rents. The local housing allowance is paid to those on low incomes who rent from a private landlord. It's been frozen for almost a decade now, despite rents rocketing in that same period. Our Work and Money correspondent, Megan Owen, reports from the London borough of Hackney.
65-year-old artist Esther says she is one small rent rise away from homelessness.
You are kind of like in what is a quicksand or something, that nothing is stable under your feet.
She receives universal credit, but after several rent rises over the years, says it only just covers the cost of her studio flat in Hackney.
Rents become crazy, and there's nothing out there to protect you, that's it. If my rent were to be risen again, I will have to go and claim for possible homelessness.
The amount of housing benefit that private renters like Esther and those on low incomes can claim is known as local housing allowance. It's been frozen for most of the last decade, meaning it's not kept up with ever-rising rents. Ahead of the budget, housing charities and landlord groups are calling on the government to unfreeze it, worried it's driving record numbers of homelessness.
What we're seeing is that people have to choose between eating and having a roof over their head. So we've seen a spiralling number of people going to food banks, and also the number of people in temporary accommodation has absolutely boomed. And there are far too many people stuck in temporary accommodation because they can't afford to pay their rent. So what we want to see is local housing allowance unfrozen so that people can finally afford to pay for their homes.
The Resolution Foundation think tank estimates that renters in Hackney are seeing the biggest gap in London between local rents and local housing allowance at £350 a month. Hackney Food Bank says this is pushing more working people to use their services.
We see a large number of working people who come to the food bank here. We see lots of people who work multiple jobs in order to make ends meet. It's not unusual for us to see professions like nurses and the occasional firefighter or police officer, so real key worker roles who simply can't afford the high cost of rent in Hackney.
Other groups like the London Renters Union say the government should focus on freezing rents to stop landlords from profiteering. The government says it's tackling the impact of rising rents and housing shortages with their commitment to building 1.5 million homes. They add they're putting more money in people's pockets by uprating benefits. But in the meantime, renters are increasingly feeling the gap between their housing benefits and the rising cost of rent. Megan Owen, BBC London.
Now, if you're someone who enjoys going to the Panto at this time of year in the run-up to Christmas, here's something slightly different to tempt you into the theatre. It's this, ballet. The New English Ballet Theatre has tweaked the classic performance of The Nutcracker and are taking it on tour to reach out to a new audience who may not have thought of ballet before. Anna O'Neill went to take a look.
The Nutcracker is the festive ballet everyone knows, and it's being kept relevant by the New English Ballet Theatre thanks to some new choreography and story setting to encourage new audiences.
A lot of theatres, a lot of regional theatre might have given up on ballet in their calendar. So I think it's a good message for us to go out there and say, you know, there is a small company that can offer this amazing production, which has a little bit of a fresher twist, while maintaining the same ballet magic that makes the Nutcracker as entertaining and is international as famous as it is.
When the Nutcracker is the ballet, the Sugar Plum Fairy is every ballerina's dream role. And this acclaimed Sugar Plum Fairy is in London from the Vienna State Opera as a guest principal dancer.
Nutcracker was my first ballet I saw when I was a kid, like about 3-4 years old. And I can say that's what moved me to start to dance. Like the music of Nutcracker, especially the Grand Pas de Deux, it's always moved me, even when I was a kid. And after I saw this performance, something happened and I wanted to dance.
Did you always want to dance the part of the Sugar Plum Fairy?
Yes, of course. You always want to be a princess, Sugar Plum Fairy. And Nutcracker was also the first big premiere I did in the Vienna State Opera and my first official DVD. And it's the first big ballet which I do in London.
It's been really special actually having Ludmilla here to be able to watch such a prestigious dancer do that and be able to learn or kind of maybe take things of how she does it.
The New English Ballet Theatre has been all about versatility and relevance since it was created 15 years ago.
I started thinking about it in 2008 in the financial crisis. I just realized that there were so many excellent dancers coming out of our vocational schools, really worldwide, and they all come to London. And there were fewer and fewer jobs being offered. So it was just as practical as that.
The ballet goes on tour in Welwyn, Sevenoaks and Radlett before coming back to London in December after an international stint in the Bahamas, much to the delight of one of its dancers.
Me being a Bahamian American, stepping into the roles that they've casted me as, and then returning to the very island where my ancestors were enslaved at one point is a huge win, not just for me, not just for New English Ballet Theatre, and not just for the Bahamas, but for a win for classical ballet. It's showing time and time again that this art form belongs to all of us and not just narrowed down to one particular demographic or background.
The Nutcracker opens at the Radlett Centre on the 28th of October. Anna O'Neill, BBC London.
I think that's going to be really popular. What a great thing to go and see before Christmas. Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. And Kate, when we were upstairs in the office and we were chatting, I was saying it was kind of very mild and what a nice day we've had. You said, yeah, but there's a a named storm coming tonight. And have to say, didn't quite believe you, but then I saw that look in your eye and I thought, don't question her.
Don't question me, Assad.
No.
It is on its way. Now, it's not necessarily our storm. We didn't name it. The French Meteorological Service named it Storm Benjamin. Now, this is a picture of today, quite a beautiful picture, actually. Across the Thames, as you can see, we have had some decent spells of sunshine, but this was ahead of what's coming. Now, as we head into this evening and overnight, deep area of low pressure starts to move across. That is Storm Benjamin. Now, it's going to bring some very heavy rain. The Met Office has not one but 2 weather warnings in place for us in London. Now, first is for rain. We're looking at 20 to 30 millimetres of rain, localised flooding potentially. That's going to be on the road tomorrow morning, but also the wind. Now, these warnings go in overnight. This is the rain. I have to apologise for these very random white dots in the middle. I'm not sure why they're there. But yes, we have a lot of rain. The wind continues to strengthen. Now, we're looking at gusts. The warning suggests 50 to 60 mile an hour gusts, likely to hit as we head through Thursday afternoon and into Thursday evening. For London, I think it's more likely to be around 45 to 55 miles an hour, but it is on the whole just going to be very breezy. Now, this is the temperature overnight tonight, 9-10 Celsius. That rain moves through. This is Thursday. You can see gusts of wind here in the black discs. The rain continues to pile in on what will become a rather chilly northwesterly wind. The rain gradually starting to clear, but look at the gusts of wind. We're getting up to 50, 55 miles per hour, if not more, so potentially damaging. Temperatures tomorrow don't really change from the nighttime temperatures either, between 9 and 11 Celsius, so a much cooler day as well. Now, as we head further through the week, the storm clears away overnight Thursday, so the sky become clear as the temperature drop, but we start to pick up this northerly breeze and a northerly flow, so actually we're introducing this much colder air. So as we head into Friday, we've got lots of sunshine. It's a better day. You can still see a few showers bubbling up here and there, but it is going to be chilly. Temperatures 10 to 13 Celsius. And then we get towards the weekend. We may see 1 or 2 showers as we head through. Plenty of sunshine, yes, but that colder air continues to pile in. Clocks, of course, change at the weekend as well. So it is going to feel somewhat chillier. The season changing, of course, temperature dropping. And that's also at night time as well. We're looking at temperatures through the weekend dropping in to low single figures. So getting much colder, Assad.
Yeah, it is. And lots to look out for this next 24 hours. OK, Kate, many thanks for that. OK, that's it for now. I'm back at 10:30 with our late news tonight on BBC One. Before then, you can follow BBC London on X, Instagram and Facebook. Millions already do, for good reason. Join in, find out why. If you don't like it, you can always change your mind. For now, on behalf of the BBC London early evening news team, wish you a very good evening. Bye-bye.